Tell me some of the stories about Rodney being the protector.
When we had the paper route, it was me, Howard, and Rodney. It was probably about 4 or 5 of them. They were going to jump on Rodney. And Rodney said, y'all right at the little building where we had to go pick our papers up. He said, y'all get up under there. We got up under there. He got a shovel. He beat 5 dudes off of us with a shovel. From that day on, we didn't have no more trouble out of them.
In a city at the center of everything the state of Georgia has to offer, one family has an incredible story.
You ain't care nothing about the numbers, man. There's 5 of them and just 2 of us. That don't make no difference. And whatever gonna happen, we ain't waiting on no reinforcement. We're gonna do what we got to do now.
A story that many people don't know.
Gordon and Rodney.
But every American should. What was that like growing up during segregation and Jim Crow and all those things?
Gordon and Rodney, they had it different. They had it more overt, more in their face.
That's Gordon.
It's Rodney.
It's Rodney. Mm-hmm. We did the best we could. We struggled. Some days were easy, some days were not. Robert was like in the first bunch of kids that went to a white school.
I went to Lanier. They did the integration thing when they knew it was happening. They burnt Lanier down.
So, during the integration?
Yeah.
This is Rodney Davis's sister, Deborah, and 2 of his brothers, Gordon and Robert.
He was my number 1 brother. Him and my granddaddy kind of like raised me. My daddy taught me, but they raised me.
His family says Rodney earned the reputation of being the protector, especially when it came to his younger brothers and sister. But it didn't stop there.
He wouldn't let folks push you around and take advantage of you. And folks knew it, so when folks would come to him with their problems, and not only kids as kids, but I've known adults to come to him with their problems about things that was going on.
When they were young boys, Gordon and Rodney's parents would take them to downtown Macon. And some days, they'd make a trip to the post office.
They'd have a big Marine on that sign with big muscles.
Gordon says Rodney would just stand there and stare at that Marine and the poster on the wall. And he would tell his big brother, that's what I want to do.
He made that decision for himself that he would join the Marines.
In March of 1969, the White House sent an airplane to bring the Davis family to Washington, D.C. Rodney Maxwell Davis was posthumously awarded the nation's highest honor for a member of the military's valor in service to this country. Vice President Spiro Agnew presented the family with Rodney Davis's Medal of Honor. There at the White House, his parents, his brothers, Gordon, Howard, and Robert, and his sister Deborah, along with his widow Judy and daughters Nicky and Samantha.
There's that picture of you guys at the White House.
Mm-hmm.
When you're,
that's my screensaver.
How old are you in that picture?
I don't think probably 2 or 3.
2, yeah.
3, yeah.
So that's your screensaver?
That's my screensaver.
What do you think when you look at that picture?
You know what, that gives me courage. Like, if I'm having a bad day, I look at that picture And if I'm like kind of antsy about something, I look at that and I go, you know whose child you are. You know you belong to Rodney Davis and Judy Davis. You better, yeah. It gives me courage.
What do we have today? What is this?
Yes. Good.
It's good?
Good.
Oh, goat.
Thời đại cao hay là ngon, đúng đại đành.
Rodney Davis was assigned to what's known as 1-5, 1st Battalion, 5th Marine Regiment, 1st Marine Division. In mid-August 67, he reported for duty to Bravo Company's 2nd Platoon.
He sacrificed more than what any man was asked to do.
There are many details of that sacrifice that you might find hard to believe, such as the fact that at the time Sergeant Davis volunteered to go to Vietnam. He'd been working at the embassy in London, so he didn't know any of those Bravo Company Marines when he arrived in August of 67. And the date when he was killed in action, September 6th of 67. So he'd only been there with those Marines for 3 weeks. A truly remarkable and unique act of heroism. But if you spend time with members of the Davis family, you begin to understand where at least part of that comes from.
We've always been taught to be strong, to serve others, to be a person of character, person of honor, person of integrity.
The family members on this trip include Edgar, a nephew.
It's just humbling to know that I'm part of that legacy.
Regina, a niece of Sergeant Davis, plus one of his daughters.
For the past month or 2 months, it's been a lot of reflection for me, a lot of tears, like a lot of emotions I did not think I would have.
And this is Davis Hollis.
Sergeant Rodney is my great uncle. He's my grandfather's brother.
Davis is the son of Regina and John Hollis.
All those people wouldn't have survived that day. They wouldn't have, their kids, their progeny wouldn't exist today if Rodney Davis didn't act like a hero at that critical moment.
A few years ago, John wrote a book about Rodney Davis. The book goes into great detail about the Davis siblings growing up in Jim Crow-era Georgia.
I remember talking with Sergeant Davis's mother, the late Ruth Amanda Davis, before she passed away, and telling her I wanted to write a book on her son, and what I wanted to do to bring his story to light and to honor him. But it wasn't until I dove into the research that I found out the different aspects of it, that all 5 of those gentlemen in that trench with him, all 5 of those Marines, his Marine brothers, that all 5 of them were white.
Now, I want to make sure you heard what John just said right there. He uncovered a fact that until just a few years ago, the Davis family did not know.
All 5 of those Marines, his Marine brothers, that all 5 of them were white.
Now think about that. Rodney Davis joined the Marine Corps in 1961. Growing up, he was never allowed to sit in a classroom with a white student. And just a few years after that, at the age of 25, he sacrificed his life to spare the lives of 5 white Marines.
Macon was still in the Jim Crow South. So those same Marines that he fought and died with in 1967, he would have been allowed to eat in the same restaurants with them. But Rodney Davis loved his country, and he loved his fellow Marines that much, to willingly give up his own life to save theirs. It takes a special man to fight for a country that's denied him full rights as a citizen.
So each of these blue symbols represents a Marine platoon from Bravo Company.
A small group traveled to Vietnam,
and I put them in order that it's reported that they entered into the area.
To take the Davis family to the location Rodney Davis fell onto that grenade.
I need a 3-to-1 advantage according to U.S. doctrine to give my forces the best chance of success.
A couple of veterans here have done this type of work in the past.
Some veterans come back here and really want and need to sit in the same foxhole they sat in during a battle. And it doesn't always go that way. But fortunately for this family, we were able to pinpoint the exact location.
Retired Marine Corps Major Chuck Casey and retired Army Colonel Martin Jeremy Bowling.
It's a real responsibility to do justice for someone like Sergeant Davis.
In our nation's history, just over 3,500 Medals of Honor have been awarded. Some of those stories are well known. There have been movies made about several of those heroes, such as Desmond Doss or Alvin C. York, but there's been no Rodney Davis movie. His story is not as well known. Colonel Bowling is a native of Chattanooga, about a 3-hour drive from Sergeant Davis's hometown.
Why did I not know this story? This story was there when I was growing up in the 70s and 80s and 90s. So if I am an example of a young man from that region, that's all the proof that you need. The story needs to be told.
A lot has changed in the U.S. and in Vietnam since 1967, but this remote village where Sergeant Davis sacrificed his life has not changed all that much. That fact helped this team locate the exact spot this historic combat action happened in the floor of this bomb crater.
We're talking something about 40 feet across, probably 10 feet deep.
In the Khe Sanh Valley.
The crater from probably about a 2,000-pound bomb. This battle took place in a relatively flat area, a place where the farmland kind of meets a village.
That's the place where Marines fought in what's known as Operation Swift.
This is one of the worst battles of the entire Vietnam War.
There's another veteran that we know who fought in both Operation Swift and Way City. And his comment was, I would rather have gone through 10 Way Cities than one Operation Swift.
So to put that in context, those two events happened less than 5 months apart during some of the most intense fighting in the war. The Battle of Way started at the very beginning of the Tet Offensive and is among the most infamous urban warfare battles in Marine Corps history, one of the longest and costliest battles in the war in Vietnam. They fought for 26 days. 142 Marines were killed there. Operation Swift is not as well known as the Battle of Way City. This engagement was fought over 11 days. On September 6th, the day that Sergeant Davis was killed in action, 35 members of the 1-5 Marines were killed. 92 more were wounded that day.
They will maneuver into position to begin to return fire there. This is Sergeant Davis and his platoon, Lieutenant Brackeen.
Lieutenant John Brackeen was Sergeant Davis's platoon commander.
And this is when you see Sergeant Davis step up.
John Brackeen's grandson, Steve, is here.
How old were you when you first heard parts of the story?
I probably first started hearing about it when I was 6 years old. It was always as like the battle where he was behind the tombstones in which he was wounded.
To put a finer point on just how intense the fighting was, according to John Hollis's book on Rodney Davis, 2nd Platoon was 48 Marines strong on the morning of September 4th. When they returned to their combat outpost on the 8th, only 11 of those Marines were healthy enough to stay in the fight. 8 of those 11 still had injuries significant enough to be awarded the Purple Heart.
He was wounded in the hand. He was also that day shot in his notebook. The machine gun burst came so close to him that it ripped his clothes off, and he was essentially naked on the battlefield.
This is the map Lieutenant Brackeen used during Operation Swift. There are still bloodstains from September 6th, 1967 on this map. Here and here.
That firefight that day was something that traumatized your grandfathers. Tell me a little bit about that.
I think it did. I think September 6th was whenever we would have a conversation about Vietnam or about war, that was the one that he would specifically refer to. And if I'm placing myself in his shoes, I think you come back with a bit of survivor's guilt. 5 men in a trench, one heroically sacrifices himself on a grenade. Why do I get to survive? Why do I get to continue to grow my family? Well, the growth of a family and the memories created stop for another family. And I think that lived on with him. And it's something that I think about to this day, right? Like, what could have been the possible outcomes for the Davis family if someone else had done that?
The Marines are ordered to fix bayonets because now hand grenades. The reports are that when the hand grenade would come into the crater,
and everybody would climb out of the trench as fast as they could.
Just to give themselves a split second to survive.
They'd get shot at, they'd pile back into the trench, and they would basically time it.
If you are in a trench, there's no way to avoid injury. You've got to get out of the trench.
If a grenade would fall at the lip of the trench, they would just hunker down.
At this time, 2 hand grenades come into the trench at once.
A grenade fell right outside the trench and right inside of the trench simultaneously. By luck, the grenade on the lip of the trench exploded first.
The Marines roll out of the trench.
And my grandfather says what he remembered was trying to climb out of the trench and doing this.
And they hear a thud. And all the reports are that they knew immediately that something sounded different. It didn't sound like the hand grenades that had gone off previously. They knew something was different. And when they rolled back into the trench, Sergeant Davis had fallen on the grenade and saved the rest of his platoon mates around him.
So we're about 30 minutes out from the site. We are on the way to the event that we all came here for. Rodney Davis was awarded the Medal of Honor for combat action on September 6th, 1967. Today is September 6th, 2024. 57 years to the day since that combat action. So what do you feel about this weekend going to the site? I mean, what are your emotions around that?
It's kind of like I don't know how I'm going to react because I feel so antsy about it, because it's not like going to the cemetery. It's kind of like this is where it happened. So, and then when John was like, you know, this is the spot, and it's like, so I don't know what my reactions are going to be, because I feel like I'm going to be overwhelmed, but I don't want to. On the bus ride into the site, it was kind of very heavy for me, to be honest, and I really didn't know if I was going to be able to get off of that bus because as we were riding in, I kept like looking at all of the bush and like saying, God, it's hot out here, and I was just imagining what my dad was going through at that time, and I was like, I don't know if I could do this. And as we got closer and closer, I just started feeling a little safer, because I felt like, you know, I've come this journey and I've got to finish this out for my family, for my dad, for my grandparents that are not here any longer, for my mom.
And you remember we were talking about in the brief yesterday, that was one of the reasons they were out here, is the rice has been harvested. They've got these huge stockages of rice, and that's how the enemy supplies itself and allows its ability to keep pushing forward in the fight. And so the 1-5 Marines are out here in these operations, Union 1, 2, Cochise, and now Swift, trying to prevent their access to these resources. And they probably knew in advance there were existing trenches and existing ditches here amongst this heavy vegetation that they could use for cover and concealment. Do you want to go down in, or you want to stand up?
Nope. Nope. You mean down there?
Yeah. Nikki, what do you want to do?
I don't know if I can make it, I'm sorry.
Well, if you want to get down there, we're going to get you down there. That's the point. We got a whole team of folks who are going to get you down there. I'm going to fix your collar just because it's a little messed up there. There you go. We can get you down over there. It's not too steep. There we go. Okay. Let's go down here.
Now, you sure I'm going to be able to get back?
We're going to get you down in there. We're going to get you back up. I can promise you that. And if you need to hold on to my shoulder, you hold on to my shoulder. Go down in there, Chuck. Why don't you just take my arm like we're walking down the aisle? There you go. And I got you, I promise. You hold on to that. Over here. We got you. We got you. We're going to walk over this way, okay? Yep. I'm just going to walk right through there because there's some thorns and stuff right there. If you're a member of the Davis family, this is the piece of ground that has defined your family for generations. And you're standing here today. Steve, it's a pretty big deal, man. I mean, here you are.
Never thought I'd follow me.
You did. And now, like you know, what are you going to do with it, right? Like, that's the question.
My grandfather always spoke about being behind those graves over
there.
there.
Steve has heard stories about these tombstones since he was 6 years old.
And now you get to see it firsthand. That's incredible.
And let's be clear about this place. This is not just a hole in the earth in a farming village halfway around the world. This was a battlefield, a significant piece of U.S. military history. Those Marines fought a controversial war, and they fought to keep themselves and each other alive. Some people go their entire lives trying to discover what they want to do. Steve's family tells him he was 3 when he first said he was going to be a Marine. And today, he's a major with a decade of service to this country.
My grandfather and the legacy of men like Sergeant Davis are the reason I do what I do, and I'm going to continue to do it.
In the end of John Hollis's book that he wrote about Sergeant Rodney Davis, and I know most of us have read it, he quotes President John F. Kennedy, who said, "A nation reveals itself by the men it produces, but also by the men it honors." I've put a lot of thought into what to say out here, and frankly, there are no words to say what I'm feeling. I can't imagine what you're feeling. But I had the good fortune a couple months ago to listen to a former Navy SEAL, Sean Ryan, say something that I felt was completely appropriate. And so I'm just going to share his sentiment with you today. Before the Revolutionary War, all the way through until today, standing here today, approximately 1.1 million service members have made the ultimate sacrifice for what we call America today. And if you take that 1.1 million and you turn it into a percentage of the U.S. population over that same time period, that number works out to be 0.002% of the total population in the history of our country. That should be the most cherished. That should be the most honored class of people to ever have existed in American history. Think about that. 1.1 million, 0.002%. That's what President Kennedy was talking about, who we honor. And that's who we're here honoring today. I think a lot of us might ask things like, how do we honor them? What can we do to honor them? And so I'll tell you this. When you go home at the end of this week and you look at yourself in the mirror, maybe you're getting ready for bed, whatever you're doing in the end of the evening, you ask yourself one question. Was I an American worth dying for today? That's how you honor them.
This story has taken us from Linwood Cemetery in Macon, Georgia, all the way across the world back to where it all started here. When I first heard the story, and I fully absorbed what it was when I was a bit older, I learned about the selflessness and the virtue of self-sacrifice that my uncle showed here. In my eyes, to not learn from the story is to fail what he wanted us to learn. For the rest of my life, I will preach this practice and practice the ideals that my uncle sacrificed himself for.
Nicky, we're just going to take a few more minutes here. You take your time quietly, and when you guys are ready to go, that's when we'll go.
Okay.
No. I love you. This is for you. It's all for you. It's all for you.
Everything I've done has always been for you and for Sammy, okay? Always know that.
It's not words.
It's about to thank you.
It's not words. It's not words. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're gonna bury that corn, yeah.
I think Granny would want us to pray.
Mm-hmm. You gonna pray? You got to pray us out. Pray us out, Edgar.
Mind if I join you?
Yeah, pray us out.
And we ask that you just cover our family as you continue to cover us as you have always done. That you lead us, you guide us, and you bless us. Not only those that stand.
I really did not know how special these people would be in my life forever on this journey. And they will always have a special place in my heart, right? Because literally they made it so safe for me. I really have to pinch myself because I really, in a million years, would have never thought that we would end up here. I never thought this was going to be a chapter in our story. And I think about like the people that, like my grandparents, that how much this would have meant for them to be able to go on this journey. And my uncles for them to go on this journey. But you know what? It came, the journey happened. And my family, for my family to be here with me, it just means the world to me.
Rodney Maxwell Davis is the only person from Macon, Georgia to ever be awarded the Medal of Honor. And there are several places in this town that honors Davis's actions in the war in Vietnam, such as the Tubman African American Museum and Linwood Cemetery, where Marine Corps veterans raised thousands of dollars to build this monument where Rodney Davis was laid to rest.
When Edgar and Regina got back and we were sitting down and we were talking about the trip, I kind of realized then that for me, that was closure. That was closure. When Edgar said that he had buried the corn there, I was more than happy that we were able to at least connect with him and to let him know that we were carrying this forward.
Rodney Davis was a young man with a lot to live for, a wife and 2 small children at the time. But he'd been trained, been raised back in Macon to always look after his own. And that's the beauty of the story. Looking after his siblings in Macon was what he did while growing up in Jim Crow South. And he lived and died in the same noble way. He died for his new brothers in the U.S. Marine Corps. And it's a story that America could use hearing right now.
This is for you.
It's difficult to imagine just how truly terrifying it would have been to stand in this exact spot 57 years ago during Operation Swift. But at this moment, in this spot, in this one frame of video, this is what having a lifetime of questions answered looks like. Still, as powerful as this moment is, this doesn't answer all the questions. On the day Rodney Maxwell Davis died, 34 other 1-5 Marines were killed in this tree line, in these rice paddies, in this valley. How many of those families could benefit from their own moment of healing, just like this one?
It's clear to us that there's a need for this. None of us ever set out to do these things, but we understand it's bigger than us. We fully acknowledge that there are a lot of other families and Vietnam veterans that need this. And if we can give it to them, we're going to give it to them. We owe it to them. Take your time.